Hello and welcome to this week's Biology Bite. Today we're going to talk about inheritance. Heredity is the transmission of traits from one generation to the next. Genetics is the scientific study of heredity. As with last week, again, we're going to be talking a little bit about genes. So genes are on the chromosomes, and their positioning is the locus. We also call genes alleles. If the allele on the homologous pairs are the same, at that particular locus, the individual is homozygous. If the alleles on the homologous pair are different, that individual is heterozygous. A dominant allele is one that is expressed over the top of the other, and it's often denoted by an uppercase letter. A recessive allele has no noticeable effect on the individual's appearance and is often denoted by a lowercase letter. This just refers to the relationship between the two alleles in a heterozygous individual. Recessive traits, however, will have an effect on an individual's appearance when they are homozygous for that recessive trait. As we talk about genetics and inheritance, obviously we have to talk about Gregor Mendel. He was an Austrian monk in the late 1800s, and he discovered some of the primary principles of heredity. He studied individual traits in large, well-controlled experiments that involved pea plants. Mendel had 3 laws. These were the law of segregation, saying that alleles segregate during meiosis, with offspring only receiving one allele from each parent. This is true most all the time. His second law was the law of independent assortment. Genes are inherited independently of each other. For example, a white flower will not necessarily produce a wrinkled seed. The traits are independent. This is true if the genes are not linked. His third law was the law of dominance. This says that recessive alleles are always masked by dominant alleles. This is true if the genes are completely dominant. These are the traits that were studied by Mendel. Form, whether it was round or wrinkled, the color of the seed cotyledons, yellow or green, the color of the flower, white or purple, the form of the pod, full or constricted, the color of the pod, yellow or green, the location of the flowers on the stem, whether they were axial or terminal, and the size of the stem, whether it was tall or short. His law of independent assortment said that traits could be inherited independently of each other. This was true in peas, where you could have a full yellow pod, you could have a wrinkled green pod, you could have a full green pod, you could have a wrinkled yellow pod, you could also have white pods that popped up here and there. So the law of independent assortment is only true when genes are not linked. Genes can be linked when they occur on the same chromosome, and they tend to be inherited together. A dihybrid cross describes a mating experiment between 2 organisms that are identically hybrid for 2 traits. A hybrid organism is one that is heterozygous, which means that it carries 2 different alleles at a particular genetic position. Sex-linked traits are found on one sex chromosome but not the other. An X chromosome contains about 1,000 genes, few of which have anything to do with female reproduction. They can govern blood clotting, color vision, structural proteins in muscle, hair. And then you have the Y chromosome, which is only a few dozen genes, and most of them deal with male reproduction. The law of dominance says, obviously, that recessive alleles are always masked by dominant. We've said again that this is only true if the alleles are completely dominant. Incomplete dominance occurs when the heterozygote has an intermediate phenotype. Phenotype, of course, being what does it look like? And dominance refers just to the relationship between alleles. It does not necessarily mean that one allele is better than the other, only that it is expressed over the other. Some dominant genes are bad. For a completely dominant gene, the phenotypic expression of that gene is indistinguishable in a homozygous and heterozygous individual. Case in point, we're talking about purple pea flowers. A purple pea flower that is heterozygous, meaning it also carries the gene for white, will express as purple no matter what. We can demonstrate this with a Punnett square, as you can see here. We have one homozygous dominant, We have one homozygous recessive, and we have two heterozygous dominant. So the two heterozygous and the one homozygous dominant all look the same. They're all purple. This is an example of incomplete dominance where the gene for deep pink is incompletely dominant. So when bred against a flower that is homozygous for white, you get pink, light pink, in the F1 generation. Now, breeding your F1 generation together, those being heterozygous for dark pink and white, you will get, again, that same fallout where you have one homozygous dark pink, one homozygous white, and two heterozygous light pink. So the law of dominance also has something we call codominance, saying that when the phenotypes of both alleles are expressed at the same time, we get codominance. This is, blood types are an example of this. So we're not really worried about all of the stuff to the right. We're just really worried about the genotype on this one. So blood type A can have a genotype of AA or AO. Blood type B can have BB or BO. AB is always AB, and O is always two O's. Now, I am a B blood type, meaning I can either have the BB or possibly the BO. My uncle was actually a universal donor, so that recessive O bloodline or O blood type does run in my family. We also have to talk about the Rh factor. The Rh factor was found in rhesus monkeys, where the Rh antiserum for agglutinating blood cells was found and developed. And in blood typing, we annotate that as either a positive or a negative. So I am B positive. You can have A positive, AB negative, O positive, so on and so forth. What this basically means is if you have a mother who is Rh negative and a fetus that is Rh positive, you can have incompatibility, and the mother's immune system may attack that fetus's red blood cell. Incompatibility typically doesn't occur in the first pregnancies because the immune response isn't there, but subsequent pregnancies may have an immune response. Treatment involves an injection of antibodies at 28 weeks and 72 hours after delivery to prevent the mother from initiating an immune response. It is 99% effective in preventing fetal anemia. Now, our environment can actually change how our genotype expresses. So, in Himalayan rabbits, they have the genotype for black fur, but that genotype is only expressed if the body's surface temperature is less than 93 degrees Fahrenheit. So, where does that happen? It happens on the paws, the nose, and the ears. So you get a white rabbit with black paws, nose, and ears. We can also have errors in chromosome number. In animals and most humans, having the wrong number of chromosomes leads usually to some type of disorder. Abnormal chromosome numbers result from errors in meiosis called non-disjunctions, where the homologous pair fails to separate properly, resulting in one too many or one too few chromosomes. More often than not, errors in chromosome number result in miscarriage, also known as spontaneous abortion. So, usually out of 10,000 conceptions, approximately 800 result in chromosome number abnormalities, and only about 50 will result in live birth. Autosomal chromosomes are chromosomes excluding sex chromosomes, so everything else. And errors in autosomal chromosome number usually do not permit the development of the embryo. The exception here is trisomy 21, which is Down syndrome, where you get 3 copies of the 21st chromosome. Errors in sex chromosome number are more likely to result in live births, some of which have few symptoms, others which do actually have symptoms and produce different disorders. And that's our quick talk on inheritance. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you next week.